The gospel is bearing fruit and growing throughout the whole world, just as it has been doing among you since the day you heard it and truly understood God's grace. That line from Colossians 1 shows us the confidence Paul has in the good news of the Lord Jesus growing, spreading, and bearing fruit all over the world. And here in Australia, we can partner together, praying, working towards this kind of growth. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Commending and Contending. Hello, I'm your host, Jonathan Holt. Joining me today is Bill Salier. G'day, Bill. Welcome.
Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
Yeah, doing well. Now, Bill, you've recently taken up the role of Chair of Gospel Coalition Australia, and you've helped us kind of bed in this brand new board of directors. That's been
Yeah.
pretty exciting. What have you enjoyed about kicking off a board of directors for Gospel Coalition Australia?
Well, I think the thing that I've really appreciated, we've only had two meetings, but in God's goodness, we've actually got some excellent people. Not that the previous members and all that weren't excellent people, but it's just enabled us to cast our net a little bit wider in terms of expertise. And I've really enjoyed the first couple of meetings, very productive. People have got different skill sets, and we've really focused on that in getting a group together. So I like the collaborative group process that can happen on a board. Not everyone likes meetings, but so it's been excellent at that, and it feels like we're starting not something new, but we're starting a new phase in the kind of development of TGC and its governance and all that kind of thing. So it's always exciting to be in on the not on the ground floor of something and hope you don't muck it up. So
Yes, feels like a huge responsibility not to muck it up. I'm on the board of directors as well, and totally agree with you. It's great to be collaborating with people from across Australia. And I
mm,
think one of the things I've really enjoyed as we've got into it is this sense that the board of directors can really put some meat on the bones of what the Council of the Gospel Coalition Australia wants to see in terms of reaching the vision we set for ourselves. So that's been
yeah,
really enjoyable.
yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, no, for sure.
This episode, and in fact, the next couple of episodes, as we kick into this year of commending and contending, we want to look at the doubling vision statement and want to kind of really dig into what it looks like, what it means, and how it might play out for people across Australia as they get on board and work out what it looks like for them.
Mm.
I'd love to kind of begin that story with just asking you, Bill, if you would read out the whole statement for us, especially where maybe we haven't heard it before. This is our first time hearing it. What is this statement? Read it out to us, and then we'll ask some questions.
Sure. It begins, we acknowledge God works out all things according to the counsel of his will, and in his mercy saves his people through the faithful preaching of the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. For the glory of God as a movement of Reformed evangelicals in Australia, we commit to pray for and work toward a doubling, in brackets, at least, of the number of gospel-centered Christians in our country over the next 15 years. We will pray for and work towards seeing 5% conversion as a percentage of annual attendance in our churches and ministries. We will pray and work towards the gospel going to every socio-economic, ethnic, and community group within our nation, especially those currently underreached. And we will pray for and work toward a doubling of the number of men and women with the necessary conviction, character, and competency in full-time ministry and missionary service.
Great. Thanks so much. Something like this doesn't just kind of pop out of nowhere. Can you
Hmm.
help us kind of understand where did this come from? How have we got to where we are with this statement?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that the Gospel Coalition's done over the last couple of years is gathered together a meeting of significant leaders for a day to Well, to help them to get to know one another and also to think about the progress of the gospel in Australia. So I think there's been, is it two, maybe three, two of those. What do you do with a group of leaders, and what's going to emerge when you get people together? The Gospel Coalition's kind of, over the last few years, we've been around for what, 10 years now, is uniquely placed, I think, to facilitate this kind of gathering. And one of the initial goals was simply to get people who are leaders of different groups and networks in the same room, because they don't often talk to each other, and see what may emerge when they do. I actually wasn't at the last one. I was at the first one, which was held on Zoom. But this last one was held in person in Sydney last year around June. And as I understand the meeting, there was a couple of plenary talks, as you usually do, a bit of discussion. But then this idea emerged kind of as a consensus might be too strong, but certainly as a hook to hang a kind of a vision and a thinking forward, and even a cooperative vision amongst the group that was there. And as I understand it, this, I don't know, I can't remember who it might have mentioned by. Might have been by Andrew Hurd, perhaps, but it was in the context of a discussion about numbers and goals and a whole range of things, a bit of a fairly free-flowing discussion, as I understand it. And this vision, this idea of a doubling, and then to trying to put that into a manageable bite-sized chunk of a 5% increase, kind of emerged out of that. And as I understand it, it almost took on a life of its own, where the meeting suddenly thought, great idea. And then it captured the imagination of the meeting. It got immediately followed up in a pastor's heart podcast with Dominic Steele, and I think it was Sarah and Andrew and someone else at the time. You can follow that up. And so, as I say, we tried to think about what this might look like, and Rory, as the chairman of the TGCA at the time, was then asked to go away and to try and formalise the statement and give it a little bit of shape and scope, and that took about 6 months or so. One, because of he's got 1,000 other things to do, but we discussed this statement at our TGCA meeting, which happens at the end of every year, and the wording that I just read out was part of that process, and I'm pretty sure it was workshopped around other groups as well. But the core of it was really this with this idea of doubling our numbers within a period of time. And I think someone just did the maths, and the 15 years is a doubling of 5% per year over 15 years. Now, I'm not a mathematician, so I don't know if that's quite right. But it just tried to make it into a concrete goal with realisable steps and, realistic at that point. So that's kind of the background as I understand it. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good snapshot of something that kind of seems to have been a bit organic and seems to have taken on a life of its own. People have picked it up and run with it. They've tried to apply it already in their
Yeah.
own setting.
Yep.
And I know Rory wrote a really good article that we can put a link to in the show notes,
Yep.
just kind of giving a sense of some of this. What I like about this statement, I think, Bill, is that it's an invitation for us to commit to pray and
Yep.
work towards this doubling.
Correct. That's right.
So if people were kind of wanting to do something like this, if they were wanting to get on board with it, it's not like you kind of sign a form or anything, do you?
No, no, no.
How does
It's
this
not.
work? Can I just adopt this at my church?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's from one level, it's just putting into practice what everyone hopes and thinks and is working towards anyway in ministry. It's just that, as I say, it came out of a meeting of a whole bunch of groups that are involved in gospel work in Australia, and so it starts to feel maybe a little more programmatic and official than it might be. But there is no reason why. I mean, the one of the essence of this is its simplicity. So if I'm leading a Bible study group, I just kind of need to think, well, how can I double this Bible study group in the next 15 years? Now, that may be eminently achievable, though double it is not just participants. We're talking conversion growth. That's the kind of the heart of it. We're doubling Christian people that's there. But it's like a lot of things. We're all doing something and we all want to see growth, but sometimes it just helps to just make it a little bit more concrete in terms of a plan, and then that can ask you to ask the question, well, if we were going to double or add 5% in our group this year, what would that mean for our church? Now, if you're a church of 100 people, well, that means, now again, maths is not my strong side, but I think that means 5 people. Okay. And then you've got 105, and then that means that the next year you're thinking of another seven. Now, of course, you're not restricted to five and you're not restricted to seven, but that tells me, okay, that's an incremental growth. That's not beyond that. I'm not running a crusade here. I'm not running, stuff like that. That's 5 people talking to 5 friends, and one of those 5 friends saying yes and coming along, and that whole process of discipleship that involves with that. The device used to help people to think, okay, what would we need to do? And I guess the harder question is, what might need to change in order for this to realize, those kind of things. So it's a mechanism, or a very concrete way of saying, okay, how can I think more carefully about the ministries I'm doing? What would it involve to do this? And it's always been the same goal. We want to see people in the kingdom. We want to see people have a wonderful relationship with God, to have the assurance that comes from being a Christian, all that kind of stuff. But here's a way of just thinking about that. And I notice also that we put at least one of the criticisms of this goal initially was it was too conservative. And so people said to us, why not triple? Why not quadruple? And so on. So, was it initially a faithless goal? I don't know. I think that was the buried accusation. But I guess it's that question between worldly realism and gospel optimism, perhaps, and doubling kind of fits in there. But that at least there is, of course, if the Lord blesses this and there's a 20-fold increase, well, we've got mud on our face. I don't care. It's always the risk with goals that they'll fail one way or the other. You'll overachieve or underachieve, but that doesn't necessarily negate the utility of the goal itself.
And I think you're right. It's very helpful, both the 15-year mark that allows us to kind of measure where we're at now and then measure where we're at in 15 years' time.
Yeah,
And thinking of in terms of doubling at every scale, whether a small church, large church, or a parachurch ministry, what does it look like to double? How many faithful volunteers are working and reaching more people? What does doubling look like in my particular context?
yeah, yeah. No, totally. That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Without any of the pressure that you have to sign up. You want to work out yourself how it works in your area, and
yeah,
even how it works out collectively. Like, I'd say one of the things that the Gospel Coalition Australia is on about and good about is the coalition bit, the joining together, the connecting up bit. And to that end, I wonder if something about the prayer, the call to prayer in this doubling vision is really important,
yeah.
in terms of having people in an area meeting up, connecting to pray for this kind of growth. If you're in a particular area, maybe you're in a rural town in Australia somewhere, how would you go about gathering other people to pray for a doubling of believers in your town?
Yeah, yeah, really. Let me just underline exactly what you said there. I mean, I am naturally inclined to the word work, because that's just the way I think and all that. So to really underline that priority of prayer and the idea of getting together is a great kind of emphasis that you've just made, and we really want to stress that. Yeah, yeah. How do you go about this? Well, I guess the first thing is simply start locally in your own church. And are there 1 or 2 people who would like to pray? Most people's Christian networks extend beyond their church, and so maybe exploit those networks and say, can we meet once a month to pray for this goal for all of our prayers? At the Gospel Coalition, we'd like to think a little bit more formally about creating local networks. So we have some regional networks in Victoria, in southeast Queensland, in Wollongong, and one of our goals as a network of networks is to multiply networks. And we're developing a kind of what do you call it? A kind of a playbook on how you might think about creating a local network. It really needs one or two people who are very committed to the idea, prepared to do a little bit of work and take initiative to gather people. But to start simply with a prayer over a breakfast or something like that is a great way to just begin. Start small and see what the Lord will do with it. And I think the little I know of church history is that often great things start with a couple of people getting together and praying, then gathering others in, and then seeing. But then I guess I'd also say, with my work hat on, at some point the discussion needs to also turn to the work side of things. Now I wouldn't be doing that too soon, but to think of the pray and think and brainstorm and ideas, and it may be simply as simple as again, this is a well-worn path. Who are the three or four people within each person's local network that you can pray with, that you have many points of contact with, whether they're people in shops or in streets or retirement villages or schools or whatever it's going to be. Just start thinking through those networks and praying for people there. What can you do as a church? Where would you bring people if they need to hear the gospel and you're not confident in speaking it, or maybe you need to pray that that you can work out a way to be better equipped to do that. I'm going to let the Lord kind of in the end put all those things, but they're all possibilities that may come when you get together. But as I say, that starts simply with one or two, probably in your local church is the best place to start. The neighbouring church or group that and just covenant together, to use the kind of phrase, to meet for regularly, to just go through this process and to have a look and see what the Lord will do. And take note particularly of points 2 and 3 under the pray and work towards. Every socio-economic, ethnic and community group within our nation. What does that mean for your local area? And what would that mean to begin to reach those people? The people with the necessary conviction, character and competency in full-time ministry and missionary service, not forgetting that if this goal is achieved, it's not only going to benefit people in Australia, but it's going to benefit people everywhere as people offer for Christian service. But that may cause you to think, okay, who in my church is a person who has the necessary conviction, character, and competency and ought to be encouraged into full-time Christian ministry? So lots of possibilities when we get together and start doing this.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's things we can only accomplish when we do them together.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're right. I like that, beginning that quite simply with prayer could be quite a powerful thing in a town, in a suburb, in a school community, in a nursing home community, wherever it is. And maybe people will start praying for this doubling vision. And I guess if people reach out to us at Gospel Coalition Australia and think they've got a few people together, and maybe they've got a local network, that we can help them kind of take the next steps in terms of
yeah.
formalizing that.
No, absolutely. We can give them ideas, and we haven't got a lot of resources we can offer, but our resources that when I say resources, I mean financial, but we can offer IP, and also the experience of seeing other networks in operation and what they might look like. And if that turns out to be a regional network in your area, and these aren't confined to any particular denomination or any things like that, and you don't pay there's no fees attached there, all that kind of stuff. These are just ways that we'd love you to support the Gospel Coalition, but that's a different question. But yeah, it's just a mechanisms to get people together to start having focused gospel ministry conversations of one kind and another. But as you say, it starts with the prayer. Yeah.
This has been really helpful. Thanks for joining me in this episode today, Bill.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, it's a pleasure, and it's a good thing to work through. I mean, the other thing about this vision is at the Gospel Coalition, we're also thinking how this will integrate into our own thinking about our organisation. So, and what contribution we might make to this. But maybe that's another podcast down the track.
Sounds like a whole other episode. I look forward to having that conversation with you as well. Thank you so much, Bill.
No, thanks, Jonathan.